All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's week 7. I can't believe we're practically halfway through the semester already. That just blows my mind. This semester is cruising right by. We have some new exciting stuff to talk about this week. Today's conversation is really going to be broken out into two really kind of unique sections. We're going to spend some time talking about some new modeling tools and some new modeling techniques, and then we're going to wrap up our conversation today by focusing a lot on the rendering side inside of Modo. And specifically, we're going to talk about the different light types, and we're also going to explore kind of our first industry standard 3-point lighting setup. So should be pretty fun, over the course of the next hour and a half or so. Today's lab exercise is going to give you a hands-on opportunity to really explore this new modeling technique called sweeping. We're going to be sweeping today, and it should be pretty fun. Okay, let's look at this week's course information. Just give you a nice 10,000-yard description as to what our goal is and what we are striving to accomplish. So in the Advanced Lighting and Rendering blog post, you'll find the content for this week's stuff. Our homework this week is going to be the production of this cool little medicine bottle. And is my internet working? There we go. There we go. So medicine bottle this week, but how we create this medicine bottle is going to be very, very different from how we've been creating cylinders in the past. We're going to be using a new tool this week, or a new technique called profiles and sweeping profiles. So this is a technique and idea that you really only want to use on cylindrical objects. And it's really great to create a high-detailed cylindrical object almost instantly. It's pretty quick. And it also gives us an opportunity to talk about the path tools and the curve tools inside of Modo. So it's a great little fun exercise. It's not as heavy as some of the exercises have been in the past. So if you've been like really wigging out and super stressed over like your martini glass and your stoplight, this is our moment to exhale. This is not a backbreaker. I kind of hit you hard, and then I pull back a little bit. And the next week, I'm going to hit you hard again. So enjoy the kind of respite, if you will, for 1 week. This is the week to heal, right? This is kind of like our off week in the NFL, right? This is where we kind of lick our wounds and heal up and get a little bed rest. And the next week, I'm throwing you against the Broncos, okay? Yeah, this is our bye week. But there's still homework in the bye week, so it's not like you have it entirely off. So we're going to be making a medicine bottle. Our lab exercise today will give us an opportunity to kind of continue working with profiles and getting our hands dirty with this entire radial sweep command. We're going to be doing some goblets and some glasses in our lab. It should be a really fun opportunity for us to continue to explore curves, profiles, and radial sweep. More on that here in a minute. Okay? There are some things that you're going to need to download for this week's homework and lab. You can find all of those resources in the Resources tab at the top of the page. Specifically, there are these two things. These are images. There's actually 3 images that you're going to be downloading from the website. Please make sure you save these to your own personal hard drive and ensure they leave with you at the conclusion of today's class, because you'll need them for both the homework and the lab. We'll come back to these much, much later. Okay? All right, questions. We're excited. Everyone kind of know what we're doing, what the plan is for today. I'm talking about radial sweeps, which will be kind of fun. I know, I'm excited for radial sweeps. Let's jump into it, shall we? So I've opened up Modo 701, and over the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've been primarily focusing on the box modeling technique for constructing our shapes. And if you were to describe box modeling to someone, or if you were just to describe the general process that we've been going through to generate our models, how would you describe it? Basic. And we're starting with a basic shape, right?
Using boxes.
Yeah, using boxes or unit primitives or very simple shapes. And then what are we going to do with those simple primitive shapes? Yeah, we're going to expand upon them. We're going to refine them. We're going to edit those simple shapes into something that's definitely more complex. I think our coffee cup is such a great example. Our Lego brick, great example. Shoot, the Jeep that you guys made, fantastic example. Whole series of simple shapes just glued together as if we were stacking Lego bricks back in kindergarten. Okay? Box modeling at the core. Well, this week we're going to take kind of a step away from box modeling, and we're going to start with a very complex shape. And we're going to apply a very simple tool to our complex shape to yield a complex-driven mesh, okay? So it's kind of the exact opposite. We flipped the paradigm on it, okay? The complex shape that we're going to initially begin with this week is called a profile. And we're going to use this profile in tandem with the Radial sweep tool here in Modo. To make profiles, we have a number of tools at our disposal. We're going to go over 3 of them today. We're going to go over the Hermit Curve, which is going to be a lot of fun. We're also going to go over the good old-fashioned Bezier Curve, and then we're also going to talk about the pen tool, and I think you're really going to enjoy the pen tool here in Modo. Now, if you're coming from a traditional two-dimensional design background and you're used to working with the pen tool in, like, let's say, Photoshop or Illustrator, this is very, very different. The only common element between them is the name. The function of the pen tool here in Modo is wildly different than the function of the pen tool over in Photoshop. Okay? However, the Bezier Curve tool is going to feel very comfortable and very recognizable if you're coming from Photoshop or Illustrator. More on that in a minute. Okay? So the whole idea this week is to start with a two-dimensional shape, a two-dimensional profile, an outline, and then take that profile and radially array it around a point to make a three-dimensional object. Now, this is something that I'd only really recommend for cylindrical shapes. I think it works really well for cylindrical objects. I don't know if there are 1,000 different ways to use 1,000 different tools, but I've primarily used radial sweep in these profiles when generating complex cylindrical shapes. Let me kind of jump in and show you some of the tools that we're going to be working and exploring today. As I mentioned a moment ago, this week's all about curves and profiles. So let's jump over into the Basic Tool tab and begin to explore where we can find all of these basic curve and pen tool profiles. Okay? So we know the top row of our basic tools is all of our unit primitives, but ultimately where we're going is this button right there. Okay? That button is home to all of our curve and pen types, or pen tool types, excuse me. The one that's on the surface there, that's the pen tool, okay? We're going to come back to that here in a minute, all right? However, if you look very carefully, in the bottom right-hand corner of all these buttons, is a little black triangle. And if you know anything about most computer software applications, that's kind of a common user interface element that reminds us that there's a nested tool in here. So if I was to left click and hold on that button, you can see that we have a whole series of sketch and pen tools inside of this section of the interface. I'm going to start off the day by talking about the curve tool. And really, this is the truncated name for the tool. What this is called the Hermit Curve, okay? The Hermit Curve has been around since day one in computer graphics, and it kind of follows along some very basic principles. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right. To work with the curve tool, it's pretty easy. I'm going to zip over into the front viewport just so it's a little easier to see and understand the impact of this tool within our scene. The Hermit Curve tool works on a very simple idea. It's based on a series of points, and we get to select those points and determine where those points exist inside of our three-dimensional scene. If I click once with the Hermit Curve tool active, you can see that I just get a single dot. The second time I click, boom, I get a straight line. And as the definition of a curve kind of takes place, how many points do we need to define a curve? 3. So upon the third click, we're going to define our first curve. There we go. So there's our curve. Pretty neat. Now, I like the Hermit Curve tool. I use Hermit Curves a lot. They're a nice way for us to get very gentle, sloping, smooth curves. It's very difficult to get hard edges and corners with the Hermit Curve tool. So in a lot of applications, this is a nice addition to our tool set. Come on in. Good timing. We're just getting started. Whoops. Huh? Yeah, there's one right here in the front. Okay. So a couple moving parts of the Hermit Curve tool that I want to make sure everyone's aware of. Whenever you start laying down these control vertices along the curve, you get access to move these control vertices while the tool is still active. And I think that's an important distinction to remember and keep in mind. The tool is still on. Okay, we see the name of the tool active over here in our tool options. And we also get those blue control vertices flowing along the curve themselves. While the tool is still active, I can go in and change the location of any of these and continue to work. However, notice that there's always one control vertice that's a different color. What color is it? Yellow, kind of a yellowy gold, okay? That's an important one to keep in mind. whatever is the yellow control vertice along our curve is denoted as the active control point. If I was to continue to click outside of the form of this curve, I would generate another control vertice from that point. Okay? So check it out. This is the control vertice that's selected right now. So if I was to click over here, boom, I created a curve from there to there. However, if I clicked on this one and then clicked up here, boom, I added a new control vertice between this one and this one. So that new one was born in between. So whatever is the active control point along our curve is going to denote where the next point is going to be added. We do get some options when we're defining our curve in our tool options that are really important. We can create a closed loop pretty quickly. We can so I can hit closed, boom. It'll create a loop. Pretty neat. I use this a lot. Very nice. Excuse me. Also, we have this mode down here that's pretty neat. Sometimes we just want to edit the location of our curve and we don't want to add any new points. Well, if we change the mode from add to edit, now I won't be able to add any new points. I'll just be able to move the existing points around like this. Okay? So if I click here, like I'm clicking, and I'm not adding any new points, I'm only able to move in edit mode, which is pretty neat. Of course, there's also delete, and you can imagine what delete's going to do is just going to delete points from the curve. Okay? Yes, sir?
Is there a way to reverse your adding points from clockwise and counterclockwise?
Is there a way to...
Like when you add a new point,
Uh-huh.
you're on a point and you add one, it'll add it to the clockwise position.
Yeah. Yeah, it just depends on where you click within the scene. Okay, so for example, let me go back to the add mode here, and notice that I have this control point down over here selected. So if I wanted to go counterclockwise, boom, I just click on, well, yeah, actually, I thought it would have done that, but I guess I'm wrong. So no. And now that I think a little bit more about it, it makes sense because whenever you add in a new control vertice, it's renumbering all of these in a specific sequence. Yeah, it looks like you can't. So no. I guess I've never really paid attention to that too much. But looks like you're right. All right. So I like working with Hermit curves. I think they're really cool. Some people get a lot, or some people they struggle when working with Hermit curves because they often want to generate straight lines within the curve itself. Now remember, Hermit curves are using the location of 3 points along the curve to define that line. Okay? So if you draw your attention to the top of my curve here, I have this lovely fellow, and then I have this lovely, that lovely fellow, and then I've added this new one in between. So if I try to do something like this, yeah, now we're getting these humps in here. If I try to zero it out and kind of do that, madness ensues. Okay? It's very difficult to generate perfectly straight lines with the Hermit curve. The only way to do it is to have 2 points along that curve. That's the only way to do it. Okay? So keep that in mind. That's kind of a limitation of the Hermit curves. Okay? They want to create curves, not straight lines. We're going to get to those next. Absolutely. Those are the Bezier curves, and we like Bezier curves a lot. Okay? So one final feature about the Hermit curve that makes it really neat, if I was to drop the tool, check it out, this is what we're going to get. We're not going to get a polygon. Well, actually, we're kind of getting a polygon. It's a three-dimensional surface within inside of our scene. Okay? We still can go in polygon mode and select that guy and move it all around and change its location. We can even rotate it. So we still have complete transform control over this curve, okay, which is pretty neat. Hit undo for a couple steps here. But what if I want to go in and change the shape? Modo understands the awesomeness of the Hermit curves. What we've created here really isn't a polygon. It's really not an edge. It's not a vertice, it's a curve. It's a special component inside of the 3D modeling system inside of Modo. And Modo understands what this is on the back end, okay? So if I was to select it, like I have here, and then return to the Hermit curve tool, check it out. I get access to all my control vertices, and I can continue working with this tool as much as I want, okay? I think you can even add points. Yep, you can even add points. So it is kind of a live tool, or a live item with, excuse me, it's not an item, a live component within inside of our 3D modeling universe inside of Modo. We can always go back in, edit its location, change things around, and make the corrections we need to our curve, okay? I like working with Hermit curves. However, the inability to make straight lines quickly and easily is a factor. It's a factor. Now, for the most part, if you're coming from the traditional graphic design world, this curve type isn't your jam, okay? This isn't what you're used to working with, okay? You're used to working with, FYI, these are three-dimensional objects as well, so your curves can go in all sorts of funky directions. Let me delete this. All right. If you're coming from the traditional 2D design world, you're probably used to working with the pen tool over in Photoshop or in Illustrator, and you're used to creating what's called a Bezier curve. As Mr. Pryor pointed out with his awesome hand signals, the one with the handles, right? And everyone does that whenever they describe, yeah, they go, the one with, these things, the handles, the tangent handles along the control vertices, okay? We absolutely get access to those here in Modo. However, they behave a little bit differently from some of the Hermit Curve tool functions that we were participating in a moment ago. You can find the Bezier tool in the exact same pull-down menu inside the interface. So here's the curve tool section. And there it is, Bezier Curve, okay? All right, so if we click once, of course, we're just going to get a point. Click twice, now we have a straight line. We click 3 times, and now we're starting to see the function and the inclusion of all of those Bezier handles. These Bezier handles work almost identically to the way you're used to working with them over in Photoshop, so it allows us to change the tangency of the slope of the curve going in and out of those control vertices. If you look very carefully here, of course, these are the tangent handles themselves, and I can move them around and generally have a really good time with them. You can also break them, and I'm got to remember what the keyboard shortcut is to break them. I think it's the control key. Yep, if you hold down the control key and then click on just one side of the slope, you can control that individually, okay? But it's kind of a funky thing where you have to kind of do it like this. I'm holding down the control key now. The moment you click on them again after they've been broken, they kind of pop back, which is kind of annoying. If the guys at Luxology are listening, you should fix that. That'd be great, okay? So this is the standard curve type that we're used to participating with over in Photoshop. And this is really kind of great because we can very quickly go in, adjust the location of these tangent handles, and have some areas of our curve where we have straight lines, and then other areas of our curve where we have straight up traditional curves. So it produces a very powerful editing type here in Modo, and it allows us to create some really unique effects quickly, okay? Something like this. There we go. We also get some familiar tool options over here in the tool options section. If we wanted this loop to be closed, if we wanted this curve to be closed, simply enabling that command in the tool options yields the result that we're after. And we are on the way. There we go. Ta-da! Here's my funky little curve. Tremendous amount of control. Okay. Works and behaves almost identically to the way we're used to working with them over in Photoshop. However, I would like you to notice the behavior of the Bezier curve after I've deactivated the tool. I've dropped it, right? Now visually, what tells you that this tool is off? Handles are gone. Nice visual reinforcer that nothing's on, right? What's the other place in the interface you should always kind of be keeping your eyeballs geared towards? Yeah, the tool options section on the left-hand side of the screen. I always kind of keep a steady eye on this section of the interface because this is always going to tell me what's active, what's active and what's on. So kind of keep an eyeball on that portion of the interface at all times. All right, so the tool is off, but maybe I want to go back in and continue editing this curve. I want to make some additions to the work that I've just completed, okay? So one would think that it behaves very similarly to that of the Hermit curve. So if I select it and then reactivate the tool, I don't get access to all those control vertices. Or do I? Or do I? Actually, you do, but it's a little bit hidden. Okay, it's not as awesome as the Hermit curve. And this is another thing. If the guys at Luxology are listening, please add this to the Bezier curve. That'd be awesome. Okay. I want to be able to go in and continue editing and refining my Bezier curve after I've dropped it, exactly how I was working with the Hermit curve, right? However, the way for us to do this is a little bit kind of indirect. Let me show you what I'm talking about. At the conclusion of the creation of your Bezier curve, and same with the Hermit curves, by the way, what you get is a whole series of vertices along the curve. Now, right now, we don't see those vertices, right? How do I change my OpenGL viewport to allow me to see all the vertices inside of my scene? The O key, right? This is a viewport property. You got it. So with the cursor in the center of our viewport, hit the O key. And specifically where I'm going in here is under Active Meshes. And then we need to enable Show Vertices. All right. Now, the moment I enable that command, you can already see inside of my interface here, I'm getting a whole bunch of black dots. And in many ways, in every way, those are the vertices. But they're seemingly in some weird places. Okay, ignore all of these because that's just my silly keyboard error. Okay, but these in here are actually the control vertices for, or excuse me, that's an old one. Excuse me, these are left over from, there we go. Some of these are left over from that Hermit curve that I incorrectly deleted. But some of these are the control vertices for the tangent handles on the curve. So we still get access to change the tangency of a number of these elements. That's the control vertice for the actual, or that's the vertice that's controlling the actual location. Here's a tangent handle. One of these is the tangent handle. That's clearly not it. Now I'm in vertex selection mode here. There we go. There's the tangent handle. This is the tangent handle. Nope, I was wrong. Excuse me. There we go. So we do get the ability to edit this Bezier curve after it's been created, but it's not as powerful as the edit tools that we're used to working with the Hermit curve. Okay? So we get a little bit more of that edit functionality back into the scene at the conclusion of working with the Bezier tool. So it's like they giveth and they've takeneth at one hand. They've given us awesome stuff that allows us to create some really cool things, but they also take away some of the functionality after the tool's been dropped. Okay? So don't forget, go into your vertex mode or show the vertices, and you can continue working with your curves after they've been created. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here real fast, I want to delete this mesh and add a new one into the mix, okay, is where these curves are created within the scene. Because a lot of folks, they get confused as to how the computer is aligning these curves inside of our three-dimensional volume. Now, right now, the work plane is on, right? Well, actually, it's always on. I've just toggled its visibility off. I do this out of habit. I often turn the visibility of my work plane off. Okay, so there's my work plane. There's my work plane. It's just chilling at the origin of my scene. And really, whenever we generate a curve, and this is any curve inside of the application, it's always going to align, initially, the control vertices to match the orientation of the work plane within our three-dimensional scene. Okay? Check it out. If you notice the orientation of my work plane in my viewport at the moment, it's currently aligned the X along the XY axis. That's why we have this little white cube inside of our compass that reminds us as to the current orientation of the work plane. Okay? If I was to generate a curve at the moment, check it out. It's always, always, always going to align itself to the orientation of the work plane. Let's have it closed. Drop the tool, and then as I orbit around, yep, it's just stuck perfectly to that work plane. Okay? Now keep this in mind, because this can generally yield some really funky results if you're not aware of what's going on. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to delete that curve, and I'm going to create another one. This time, however, I'm just going to rock and roll. I'm selecting points, throwing them down, but now I'm going to change the orientation of my work plane. Watch what happens. Boom. Half of them are aligned to the XY, and the other half of them are aligned to the XZ, or the YZ, excuse me. Okay? Yeah, a little bit of a problem. The points are always, always, always going to be initially laid down on the work plane, so keep that in mind. I always like to suggest to people that if you're not comfortable working with the work plane, use the tool or the curve tools in an orthographic viewport. Jump into your front viewport or look at your scene from the side. It'll make it a little bit easier for you to consume and understand where all these points are being created within the scene. Because otherwise, it will kind of look correct from your current orientation, and then you like orbit around, you're like, whoa, look at this, where's 1 point? How did 1 point get way out over there? Okay, that's because you changed the orientation of your viewport while you were drawing the curve, and those points are automatically going to snap to the work plane. Okay. The work plane is here to help you, but if you're not aware of its role within inside the modeling process, it's going to feel like it's fighting against you, okay? This is one of those things where it's like only you can prevent forest fires, and only you can really prevent forest fires because the government's closed, so no one's going to help. So this is, we have these. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry. I can't even take credit for it. I saw it on Facebook like 3 or 4 days ago, and I've been like, cycling it into my daily kind of monologue every day. What? Smokey's been laid off. Yeah, Smokey's been laid off. I thought this was the coolest thing. Yesterday I was reading the news after school, and I saw an article that some dude was like mowing the lawn in front of the Lincoln Memorial yesterday. And he was like, just some random citizen was like, I want the lawn to be mowed in front of the Lincoln Memorial because none of the federal workers are mowing the lawns. So he was like, I'm doing it. And he was out there by himself in like a pair of cut-off jeans. It was a pair of cut-off jeans, like, a white T-shirt and a baseball cap.
So now we can go home and say, hey, I mowed the lawn.
Right, yeah, he participated. He helped out. I thought that was kind of cool.
I'm pretty sure
I thought that was kind of cool.
If anything else happened.
Yeah. But all the federal police are laid off because the government's closed, so no.
He found his opportunity to do it.
Right. It is kind of interesting that no one like told him to go away, right? You think that with all the security downtown Washington, D.C. Anyways, I digress. Okay.
Hey, he wants to do good and mow the lawn.
Yeah, I'm all for that. All right, let's keep cruising. So we like working with our curves because curves allow us to generate basically two-dimensional paths that we can use in a number of applications. You'll see this in action here again in about 10 or 15 minutes when we start using these two-dimensional paths in tangent with the radial sweep command. There's one other tool that I want to spend some time today talking about. It's called the pen tool. And this allows us to create something that's similar to these curve types, but the product that we get when we drop the tools are true polygons, okay? These curves, well, they're their own component type. They're different than an edge or a polygon. They're constructed from vertices, but they're not really a polygon and they're not really an edge. They're their own special component, right? Often what we want to have, though, are true polygons at the conclusion of this process. Thus enter the role of the pen tool. And the pen tool is seemingly magical. There's a lot of really neat things surrounding the pen tool. The pen tool is one of those kind of Swiss Army knife tools that allows you to do a whole lot of different things depending on which perspective you come at the tool from. All right, let's check it out. Oops. All right. The pen tool works with the work plane as kind of the exact same way as the curve tools do. So keep that in mind. I want to flip over into my front viewport just to make it a little bit easier to conceptualize what's going on. And I want to return to my curve tools inside the basic tool tab. Left click and hold, and I'm going to grab the pen tool. Okay. Now the pen tool is going to allow us to interactively create a custom polygon. It's not going to create a square. It's not going to create a circle or cone or cylinder. We're in the driver's seat as to the layout of all of the vertices along our custom shape. Of course, simply left clicking in the viewport will allow us to throw down some points. Check it out. So I'm just going to left click here. There's the first point. There's the next one. And after 3, once we have 3 points along our curve, well, actually it's not a curve anymore, we start generating our polygon. Okay? And this is a true polygon. Actually, it's not classified as a polygon. Does anyone remember what this is classified as? It's an n-gon. It's an undefined number, or this surface has an undefined number of sides to it. It's an n-gon. Okay? And what we can create here is a custom shape quickly. And at the conclusion of this, what we get are true polygons. For example, if I was to drop the tool, that's a true shape. It's a true polygon created with real edges. I can go into these edges. I can select them, move them around, use my standard component editing tools to go crazy with this. I can even select that shape, and I could bevel it out if I wanted to. using a standard bevel tool. And what we are always going to get are true polygons. Okay? The pen tool is an incredibly powerful feature inside of Modo because it allows us to conceptualize basic forms quickly. We don't always have to start with a cube or a circle. We can start with custom shapes created with the pen tools as the genesis of and the foundation of our model. Okay? For what we're going to be working with today, the pen tool is a natural tool to use. And there's some features of the pen tool that I just want to show you that are pretty neat. Okay? I want to delete this shape and kind of start over to a certain degree. Double click on my edge, delete that bad boy. I'll reactivate the pen tool. Okay? Now, if we look at some of the options that come with the pen tool, there are a lot of them. Check it out. All right. Now, the first thing that we have access to in the tool options is the ability to change exactly what the pen tool is going to be creating. There are a number of types of surfaces that we can generate quickly with the pen tool. However, I think for this week, I would only really recommend that you guys focus on creating polygons. We can create lines, we can use the pen tool to lay down individual vertices within the scene, but just use polygons. Know that we can extend its feature set to create other surface types, but I think this is really how I would want you guys to work with this tool, just making polygons, okay? All right. Making polygons. The other thing that I want to draw focus to is the ability to flip the polygon and the ability to merge vertices. These two elements are ones that you're going to kind of need to keep an eye on as you work with the pen tool, okay? Depending on your local orientation inside the three-dimensional scene, you may need to flip the surface normal of your n-gon. Warning, science content, okay? Heavy thinking math is about to drop on you guys, okay? I know, math, no likey. Okay, last week I think we actually talked about a lot about surface normals, right? What is a surface normal?
Direction the polygon is facing.
Absolutely, Nathan's got it right. It's the direction the polygon is facing. At times, when we're generating the polygon, these n-gons with the pen tools, the surface normal could be the opposite direction that we want it. Hitting this flip polygon button is basically reversing the surface normal. It's the exact same function as if we were to select the polygon and hit the F key like we did last week. It's the exact same command, just inside of the tool itself. Okay? Really nice to have access to while we're generating the polygon. Probably most importantly, we also have this merge tool. And I want to try my hardest here to create an example where the merge tool kind of screws me over. The merge tool is defaulted on, it's active right now, and what the merge tool is going to do is that if there are two control vertices that are created that are very close to each other, it's going to join them. Okay, it's automatically going to weld those 2 points together, and at times it's rather difficult to recreate, but let me see if I can be successful here. I'm going to zoom in. Let's see. Yeah, it's not going to do it for me today. But just keep note of this. Often what I do is I just turn it off. Okay? I turn it off. This is something that you'll probably absolutely want to do when you're working on your homework assignment this week. Just turn it off. Okay? All right. There we go. Say again? You hit the merge button to crash Modo. Awesome. Not awesome. Oh, there we go. All right. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Sometimes the merge tool can really screw you up. You may want to turn it on and off depending on how well the tool is working. Okay? Now, very similar to the Hermit Curve tool, you get these blue control vertices inside the pen tool. It works identically in function. Okay? Whatever control vertice is gold, that's the active element. So that's where the next control vertice is going to be born from. And every once in a while, it drives me crazy. The pen tool does exactly what you saw there. I have that one selected, and I click, yeah. Grrr. Sometimes it does this, and it just drives me crazy. This is called a bug, okay? And I hate doing this, but sometimes the only way to resolve a bug is to drop the tool, hit F twice, there we go, and now it's flipped. Okay, see how earlier it had that big opening in there? Oops. Of course, it's not going to do it. It's an OpenGL drawing error. It's a little bit of a bug. Let me see if I can recreate it again here for you. And oftentimes that bug kind of rears its ugly head when you're adding points in between an existing plane, like that right there. Okay, can you see how the edges go this way, up, and then down, yet the computer is unintelligently doing that? Ooh, Moto, bad Moto, bad Moto, okay? So check it out. If you were to just simply drop the tool, hit the F key twice, okay, that problem is resolved. It's just an OpenGL drawing error.
I had that happen a few times on the Jeep.
Oh, the Jeep? Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, well,
Like I did the F twice.
Uh-huh.
Like sometimes it would just continue to happen in program.
in certain, this is the only situation where the F tool is kind of bulletproof, okay? Was it a true three-dimensional object? Yeah. That may have been a different issue. When you're working with three-dimensional objects, sometimes there can be torques within the surface that will generate a shading error. It's like I always imagine a surface like a piece of paper, so we've twisted the piece of paper, and now the computer doesn't understand how to draw that quad polygon with that torque in there. Hitting the F key isn't going to fix it. You need to kind of flatten out the surface.
Yeah, well, I actually tried to do that and I realized that problem.
Yeah.
But then I would like draw, I would select the three vertices and make a tripolygon.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it would like draw the tripolygon like it was the quad polygon.
Interesting. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, every time I think I know what I'm doing, sometimes Moto throws me a big curveball, and you're like, okay, whatever. You're in charge here. I'm not in charge. I'm just the passenger in this ride. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, so I'd have to see it. Many of the bugs that we run into and the issues that kind of bubble to the surface are entirely, almost exclusively conditional in that moment and in the scene. So as much as I hate to say it, and this is the worst thing to hear as a student coming from an instructor, I got to see the project. I had to see the project file in order to really understand how to troubleshoot it and fix it. So bring issues like that to class and we can resolve them. Liam, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. You got. We're going to go through that a little bit later, Liam. Okay. We'll come back to that idea. It's as a little tease of what we're going to be looking into later. It's just a backdrop item. It's just a backdrop item, kind of like how we worked with our coffee cup. Okay. All right. So let's talk for a second how we can use these curve tools and the pen tool in our daily production pipeline here in Moto. I use the pen tool a lot. It's one of my favorite tools. I often find it a whole lot easier to conceptualize a form, the sculptural side of a 3D object, in 2 dimensions first. And then I start extruding that 2-dimensional surface into a 3-dimensional shape.
I'm having some trouble with the pen tool.
Okay, specifically?
It's not doing it.
Okay. David has run into a power feature of the pen tool, and let me show you what I'm talking about. I intentionally didn't go into this, but since we're here, let's talk about it for a second. The pen tool has many functions. I've only shown you one. Okay. If you keep exploring the tool options in the pen tool section, you're going to find that there are some other goodies down here that are going to change the way the pen tool behaves. Okay. We also have this wall mode for the pen tool that is custom built for architectural visualization. So if you're making a floor plan for a building, this wall mode is pretty neat. And this is what's enabled on yours, David, I think. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do inner just so you guys can see what's going on. And now when I start laying down points, and I got to set an offset value here. Let's see, I want each one of my walls to be 6 inches. So now when I left click, check it out. It's creating strips, okay? It's no longer creating a custom shape. It's every time I click in the viewport, it's as if I'm generating an entire wall on the blueprint of a house, okay? Yeah, they made this tool specifically for the ArcViz guys. We're going to be doing some architectural visualization here shortly. We're going to be using the wall mode in conjunction with the pen tool exclusively to help flesh out the details of our house here in a couple weeks. Okay, it's going to be a lot of fun. But this is a landmine. So just make sure you enable it and you turn it on and off, okay? I'm just going to turn mine to off, and now I'm back to the original kind of behavior of the pen tool, okay? Okie dokie. All right, let me show you how we're going to be working with the pen tools and these different curve types in tandem with the radial sweep command. Radial sweep allows us to take these two-dimensional shapes and basically extrude them along a 360-degree circle, okay? It's kind of a combination of the radial array command and the extrude command all kind of simultaneously thrown into one. If you're coming from another application, so if you have experience in like Lightwave or Cinema 4D or Maya or Max, this is often called lathing. It's the exact same thing. We've been doing it since like day one in the computer graphics industry. It's not anything new, but it is found its home here in Modo, a fact of which I'm very thankful for. Let me show you how it works. In order for us to use the radial sweep command, we have to start with the two-dimensional plane first, okay? I'm going to use the pen tool just because I think it's a little bit more illustrative of what's happening to make my two-dimensional profile, my two-dimensional plane. And I'm going to make something that's just kind of funky. I'm going to make a bowl. There we go, something that looks like that, okay? That's a funky looking bowl. Sure, why not? Just pretend, okay? What we're doing when we define these two-dimensional profiles is that in many ways we're taking the complete idea in our mind and we're chopping it in half, okay? And there just so happens to be a cup up here. I don't know how this bag of cups landed in my classroom, but I'm thankful that it's here in the moment, okay? Is it Mr. Verga? Did you leave these cups here?
No, it's a 2D motion graphics with pizza.
What? You guys had pizza and drinks? I feel like Fong is now like the cool teacher, and I need to bring like pizza and drinks to like seduce you to like me better. I'm joking. Totally joking. Totally joking. I can't compete with Fong. Dude walks in with like flip-flops and shorts. He's got like the coolest attitude ever. I love hanging out with Fong. Fong's a great guy. Anyways, so here's our little cup, right? The idea behind these two-dimensional paths is that we're going to chop this cup in half. So in many ways, we're creating the profile of the cup, not the full body of the cup. So kind of the outline of the cup, the basic shape, okay? So this is the basic shape, the outline, the profile shape of my bowl. And I'm going to take that profile and extrude it around a circle, 360 degrees, okay? Let me show you what I'm talking about. There are a couple things in here that I need to dial in first, okay? Here's kind of some of the hidden Mickeys of working with two-dimensional shapes. And this is truly a two-dimensional shape. You can see that the surface is only facing the positive z at the moment. Nothing on the back. It's just a two-dimensional shape. Check this out. A lot of people don't realize this, but two-dimensional shapes give us a tremendous opportunity to continue looking at form and function in our models, okay? It allows us to edit the overall shape with just a couple points along our form, which I'm all about, okay? What if I wanted to have a cool little radius down in here? What if I wanted that bottom section to be kind of curved out instead of this really sharp angle that I'm getting between these two edges? How could I do that? Yeah, this is the power of the Modo modeling tool set. We have one tool, the bevel tool, that's going to change its behavior based on what we have selected. When we have a polygon selected, we get one action, right? We've been working with that action since literally day one in here, right? A couple weeks ago, we started to explore the power of edge bevels, right? We were able to get those nice radiuses on our cubes and on our cylinders. Well, now we're going to change the behavior of the bevel tool once more. This time, however, I'm going to select a vertice. Check it out. Got my vertex selected. I'm going to fire off the good old-fashioned bevel tool, and I'm going to left-click and drag. And now we've rounded out that corner. Okay? Now, this is one of those things where I'd like to remind people, buyer beware. Okay? You are logarithmically adding more vertices into your mesh. Okay? This can cause problems depending on what you're doing, so you want to keep an eyeball on this. Okay? The round level is absolutely going to control the quality of this radius identically to the way it controlled the quality in the edge bevel. Okay? So if I was to bring this down to a round level of 0, that's what we get. If I increase this to 1, that's pretty good. I'll just increase it to 2 so I don't have a bazillion vertices cruising along the outside or the inside of my bowl. Okay? So I can also do it over here, something like that. Okay? allows me to flush out some curves and some radii pretty quickly in my two-dimensional shape. All right. So let's get to action here. Let's get to working with this bad boy. In order for us to take this profile and sweep it around 360 degrees, like everything in Modo, it begins and ends with a selection, right? We can't forget to select the darn thing, and this is usually the problem that people run into. They forget to select the polygon, believe it or not, okay? You got to select it. Hey, Andy, what's going on? Okay, no problem. It's all good. We're getting new phones. Woo! We're getting new phones on our campus, so our IT staff is very hard at work upgrading all of our equipment. So don't forget to select your polygon. Mr. Pryor, question. We're having, okay, whoa. We're having an issue with an application that we're not even talking about.
We're not on Photoshop, but the Photoshop icon is following around.
Whoa, this sounds like a possessed machine. Okay, I gotta see this. Whoa, it is possessed. That is awesome. What happens if you like, oh, I see what you're trying to do.
I don't
Yeah,
know what I'm
see if you look carefully at the cursor, it's actually trying to remove the Photoshop icon from the dock.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know why either. That's a new one. There we go. Now it's done.
Okay,
Now it's done.
okay.
Yep. I think probably what happened is that you went.
Yeah,
here,
I did.
Are you using Photoshop?
No.
You can probably just close it down. Don't even want it on. Yeah, I'd quit Photoshop. Quit Photoshop. Could be. This room is due to be upgraded here, I think, over the course of the next summer. I can't wait, because these keyboards are just getting shot. They really are. And the mice in here are just getting destroyed.
Not like a whole machine overhaul, are they?
Yeah, a whole machine, brand new machines. Yep. They get. Yeah, no, unfortunately not. They get reissued around campus. They shuffle out to all the other labs.
Donate to my shit.
Yeah, you know, I think we have 3,000 computers on campus right now. Yeah, pretty crazy, huh? So when these machines leave this classroom, they often go to some of the other labs on campus. You know, almost every other classroom on campus has a computer lab in one capacity or another. Unless you're in the like Moore Hall and Lillard, I can't even say it. Lillard Hall, excuse me. Those classrooms are like going back in time to the 70s. That building's falling down. It's kind of embarrassing. Okay, anyways, I've digressed. All right, so in order for us to use the radial sweep command, we need to make sure that our two-dimensional profile is selected. Now, I'm also going to do a couple other things in here to make it a little bit easier for me to work with this tool, okay? It's critically important that my two-dimensional profile be centered along the z-axis. And I'm going to show you the product of this with it centered, and then we're going to uncenter it. We're going to put it off at some crazy location and do it again, okay? So here it is. Let me just center this along the z-axis. I don't want to choose center select at all. I just want to make sure that it's being centered along the z-axis. Perfect, okay? Now, I'm ready to fire off the radial sweep command. You can find the radial sweep tool by going into your duplication tools. And you've probably already noticed that it's the first one in the list, right there. Yes, sir? We're going to get back to that. I intentionally did that. Good eyeballs, though. So let's fire off the tool. And it's very similar to that of the radial array tool, meaning that wherever I click within the scene is going to represent the center of that array. Pretty crazy, huh? Pretty crazy. Now I have some issues here that I need to resolve, but for the most part, it's doing exactly and precisely what I needed to do. I think my polygon may be flipped. Let me hit undo for a couple seconds here. I may. It's okay, Andy. All right, let's try it again. Radial sweep. Boom. There it is. There it is. It may have just been my model. And that's why there's my little cool, little funky bowl. All right. So wherever I click is going to determine the center of that operation. Okay. Pretty neat. Okay. There's a couple other features about the radial sweep tool that make it extraordinarily powerful. We don't have to use the radial sweep tool to make 360-degree cylindrical objects. We can change some of the options here to give us, like, I don't know, 180 degrees. If you look at the options over on the left-hand side, check it out. We have the start angle and end angle. If I was to decrease the end angle to 180, hit the return key, and zoom out, that's what we're going to get. Okay? And now with the end angle set to 180 degrees, you can kind of see what we're doing here. You can see the original 2D profile that I created with the pen tool, and it's being extruded along a radial curve in our scene at a value of 180 degrees around the center point that I interactively selected. Okay? Some other important options inside this tool. There's the count. This is going to increase and decrease the number of new edge spans that are created around this new shape. So what I'm talking about are all of these guys, okay? There are 24 of them, and I'm not going to do this 24 times, okay? There are 24 of these bad boys as they cruise around the circle that way. We can interactively change the resolution and the quality of our new shape by increasing and decreasing the count, okay? I've just put it down to 10, and you can see it update in front of us. I put it down to like 1. That's what we get, and I'm not sure why you'd want that, but you can. There it is at 2, okay? Kind of a cool triangle. Here it is at 3, so pretty neat. And if I change the end angle to 360 degrees, there's a triangle, so the count 4 will get you a square, and then now we're like, you know, okay? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. Yeah, it's an incredibly useful tool. You can also change the angle with these widgets, huh? Yes, so that's the next step in this, and I like the way Mr. Pryor is thinking. What if I want it to be, you know, a completely closed bowl? I don't want to have that opening in the center. Well, there's some additions that we have to make to our path to ensure that level of accuracy on the model that we create, okay? And this is where people often kind of get confused and where the train derails to a certain degree. Using the radial sweep tool to make enclosed objects requires us to have some technical accuracy. Check it out. I want to hit undo a couple steps here. Go back in time. There it is. All right. All right. Specifically, the technical accuracy that I need to explore, revolves around these two vertices. Those guys. Okay? That one and that one. These are the border verts. Okay? I need to focus entirely on the location of these border vertices. Does anyone know where these border verts need to go? It's actually on the x-axis, but in the center, basically at the origin of our scene. Okay? Right now, does it look like they're at the center of the x-axis? No, kind of. It's close. And this is where people go wrong, because they think, oh, it kind of looks as though they're in the center, but is it really? No, it's not. We need precision here. We need 100% accuracy. We need to have the computer define the location of those two vertices beyond any reasonable doubt in a very, very specific location. Okay? Now, let me show you a landmine that people often kind of get stepped on in this process. And I'm going to intentionally kind of screw this up to a certain degree to make it really easy for you guys to see what I'm talking about. What if we have an edge that looks like that? Okay? And I need to move both of those two vertices, because there's a border, right? They're the inside edge of my profile. I need to move them to the center of my scene. How am I going to do that? Center all, or center selected. Let's give that a try, okay? Now notice the angle of that edge. Keep that in mind, okay? Notice the angle of that edge. If I was to do center selected with those two vertices acted, center selected along the x, what happened? Say again? It goes in the middle. You got it. It split the difference between the two. It actually took those two selected vertices, and it's finding the middle point between those two selected vertices and moving that to the center. Okay? No likey. We don't want this. Okay? We want both of those vertices to pop to the center of the x-axis. Okay? let me introduce a new tool for you guys, and it's one of my all-time faves. And I've learned that I'm incredibly like OCD when it comes to 3D modeling. It's like there's a level of perfection that in my mind I have to have. Like in my mind, everything has to be straight lines, everything has to be aligned to each other. I mean, it's in another life. I'm entirely convinced I was like incredibly OCD. Okay, I get really obsessive about things being perfectly aligned to each other. So this tool allows me to kind of calm down a little bit and make sure that everything is aligned. Okay, it's called Set Position, and it's one of those tools that I wish every 3D modeling app had. Okay, it's so easy, it's hard sometimes in 3D modeling. Not everything has this. Set Position is going to allow us to select a whole series of vertices, a number of them, and automatically define their location within the scene. Okay, it's really easy to use. If we go into the Vertex set of tools, so I'm going to go into my Vertex tab. These guys right there, okay? I go into my Vertex, and it's right there, Set Position. That's the one that we want to use, Set Position, okay? Now, you want to make sure that your vertices are selected before you fire off this tool. Mine already are. So if I activate the tool, you're going to get this groovy little popover. Now, what it's asking for is a defined location, okay? Because remember, we're plotting points along a grid here. This is standard Cartesian grid, and we got 3 of them, the x, the y, and the z. So we need to feed it kind of like a coordinate, if you will. For us, our coordinate is really easy in this particular situation. Where is it? 0, the origin of the x-axis. So by leaving the value at 0 meters or 0 inches, depending on how your unit system is set up on your machine, we're placing these 2 vertices precisely at the origin of the x-axis. Okay? We're setting their position. We're moving both of them to the exact same location inside of our 3-dimensional grid. Okay, check it out. Hit OK. Boom. And now they're precisely where I need them to be.
I found out that I had to move my thing off the origin point before I fired off the tool.
Yeah. Right. FYI, you can also use this set position command in conjunction with either an edge or polygonal selection. You don't necessarily have to have vertices selected to use this particular tool. Okay, FYI. Because really, if you think about it, it's just moving the vertices of the selection, right? So if you have an edge selected or a whole series of edges selected, it's going to analyze all the vertices along that edge and move them to where it needs to go. It's pretty cool. All right, now I'm ready to start working. I'm ready to start working with the accuracy that I need to generate a bowl that doesn't have an opening in the center of it. Okay, that's step number 2. Okay, step number 1 in my accuracy stage here was centering this profile along the z-axis. I'll do it again. Center selected along the z. Huzzah. Step number 2 was grabbing all of the border vertices along the x-axis and setting them to the center of the x-axis by using the Vertex Set Position tool. And now we can start working with the radial sweep command. However, we're going to change the rules, kind of like how we changed the rules with the radial array, right? Think back to last week when you were making your martini glass, okay? Remember you were making the little umbrella for the martini glass? We used the origin, hopefully, to help us model some of the details on our martini glass, right? And the origin is a really powerful addition to our modeling process because it's a reference point within the scene. It's the only defined location inside of our 3-dimensional universe, right? If we use the origin, we gain access to an action center that allows us to model around it. You guys remember we did that? We used the origin action center to define our radial array. Well, we're going to do the exact same thing with our radial sweep. We're going to use the origin action center to define the center of the radial sweep command. Check it out. So we'll go up to, I'll select my polygon, boom, go up to duplicate, fire off radial sweep, but before I click in the viewport, I'm going to change the action center to origin. Now, I can click in the viewport, and I'm going to get what I want. Okay? Now the center of the tool has been placed at the center of my scene, the origin. All of the border verts on that two-dimensional profile were at the center of the scene. So it's like that profile is being swept like a door around the origin of our scene perfectly, and we're creating a closed shape. Closed shape. Okay? Let me do that again, just so everyone can see the process. All right. All right, so I'm going to select my two-dimensional plane, activate radial sweep, and then before I click in the viewport to apply the tool, I'm going to change the action center to origin. Now when I click in the viewport to apply the tool, I get a closed shape. Pretty cool, huh? I'll drop the tool, and here's my silly little helix generator bug still active. Even though I've dropped the tool, the helix generator is still on. You guys remember running into this last week? Boo. Pain in the rear end. Someone came up with a really, I think, creative way to remove this from being active. If you go back to the radial sweep command, check it out. If you turn the tool on and then turn it off again, it will go away. So that's kind of a nice quick way of removing the tool from influencing any future operation inside the app. All right, looking good. I'm loving it. Solid, solid, solid work. Okay. Now the cool thing about working with the radial sweep command is at the outset of the tool, we get true three-dimensional polygons. This is a true 3D mesh, okay? Which means I can go in, I can continue to subdivide it. I can go in and add new loops to shore up edges, kind of like what we were doing the last couple of weeks. I'm still in complete control here. There we go, excuse me. I'm still in complete control on any sort of future modeling operation. So I can continue to refine this mesh, and in my particular instance, I've applied the sub-D smoothing algorithm to it after I've used the tool. Okay? Tremendously powerful. Tremendously powerful. Love it. Yes, sir?
How do you drop the helix generator?
So there's two ways of doing it. Let me go back in time for a second here, see if I can get it to a point where I had it on. Okay, so now, boom, the helix generator's on, even though I've just dropped the radial sweep tool. It's no longer active. So there's two ways you can do it. The easy way that someone introduced to me last week is that if you go back to radial sweep, turn radial sweep on, and then just turn it immediately off, everything goes away. And the great visual indicator that you need to kind of keep an eye out for is the contents of this section, okay? If you don't see any tools in here, nothing's on and nothing's active, nothing's being applied to your scene. The other way to turn it off, the other way to turn it off would be to go to your Lists tab, and then inside of Lists, go into your tool pipe, which is this pipeline section, find Helix Generator, right-click on it, and choose Remove Tool, and that will turn it off as well. And hopefully this is the last version of Modo that will have to deal with this bug. This has been a really difficult bug for the guys down at Luxology to smash for whatever reason. So keep your fingers crossed. All right. Questions? Questions on how to use the radial sweep tool? Yes, sir.
My question is I try to do half a sign like you, but then it goes to all these funky shapes. What am I doing wrong?
I don't know. I tell you what. I can help Liam explore some of his problems while the rest of us take a short 5-minute break. Okay? Say again? I can't because I'm using the hardwired connection to do the live stream, so I'll come over and give you a hand. Okay? Let's just take a short little break. Okay? I've been yakking for about an hour and a half. Let's take a break. Okay, real quick. There's a question during the break on how to use those backdrop items that I provided to you on the website in this project. I just wanted to kind of refresh our memories, dust off the cobwebs, if you will, on how to work with backdrop items. So help me walk through this process. What's the first thing that we got to do to get one of those reference images into Modo as a tracing guide? I like it. I like it. Add item, right? I think that's a natural place to start. So we'll go to add item in the item list. There we go, add item. And there it is, the second choice from the top, backdrop item. Now when we add a backdrop item, as you probably remember from our coffee cup, this is what it's going to look like, right? It's just a container. It's an empty container. It's always going to show up white like this inside the OpenGL viewport. So where do we need to go to populate this container with an image? You can. There's another way of doing that inside of Modo. You can. There's another way to do that, though. A better way. Just the Properties tab. Properties tab, right? Because inside the Properties tab, we have a channel here, or a section called Backdrop. And inside that Backdrop section, we have an image well that will allow us to load in and place an image within this backdrop item. Okay? So I'm just going to select the image well. It's going to bring open what's called the clip browser. And I'm going to do add clip, load image. Okay, remember to choose load image, not new image. And then you need to navigate on your machine here to where you stored the file, and I've stored mine right, not right there, that's the something else, I want that one, bottle template. There it is. There's the image, just chilling inside of Modo. Okay. Now there's a couple things about the, yes sir, question.
I don't really see images in my properties tab, and that's where I'm supposed to go.
Now, did you add a backdrop item into your scene?
Yes.
Okay. Never mind, you got it?
That's weird. You just want to put the second backdrop item in my
Okay. Couple things that we need to look at. Now, Mr. Pryor, I like the direction that you're going. Yeah. I sense that there's confusion. Oop, you were on the right track.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, go. Hold. There we go. Now you gotta go add clip, load image. There you go. And now you can select the image and load it into the computer. Is everyone getting the whole backdrop item thing down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like too big, or is it?
You know, we're going to answer that question together as a class because there is some positioning things that we need to do.
Okay, I get it now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're creating the backdrop item, and then we're loading the image within the backdrop item. You know, you can click and drag, but I wouldn't recommend doing it. You know, I'm trying to get you guys to build this muscle memory. So,
Can you move the image?
right there. There we go. Click. Yeah. Sometimes it's right in front of you. Say again?
Can we move the image?
Absolutely. What type of object is a backdrop item? Is it a component or an item? Item. So if we were in item mode, we can select it and move it around our scene. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, looks like everyone's kind of getting it. Everyone getting it? Yeah, you guys got it. Cool. All right. Now, I've loaded in this one. It looks slightly different than what you see on your screen. On mine, you can see that I have the background filled in with white, and I did that just because I wanted to make it really easy for you guys to see on the projector here where we need to place this element within the scene. Okay. Now, this is something that people often overlook, because I'm like you guys, I start importing things in and I just want to go, right? Okay, the backdrop's in, I want to make some polygons and I just want to go, and I just want to get my hands dirty and start building stuff as quickly as I can. But we need to stop and slow down and look critically at the location of this backdrop item to ensure that we're creating the shape initially where we need it to be, okay? Now, from what we talked about in the previous example with the little bowl that I'm creating, where should we move this element in our scene? Yeah, or okay, and specifically what should be placed at the origin?
Border.
The border vertices, you got it. And specifically, what we're talking about are these guys down here. If we were to move our scene to look, or excuse me, if we were to move our perspective to look at our scene from the front, you can see that those border verts are way off over here on the negative side of the x-axis. Let me show you and kind of remind you guys of a nice little parameter that will allow you to see through the image to the grid behind it. Okay? Does anyone remember how to do this? How to make this image see-through? Because I can't see my grid anymore. It's completely occluded by the image. It's not so much from options. Okay? We got to go back to the Properties tab, right? If we select this backdrop item, our Properties tab is going to have a parameter here. So I'll select the backdrop item in the item list. I'll go into the Backdrop tab. Here we go. And then right below the image well, check it out. We have this transparency value. Okay? I usually almost always, by default, kind of habit, just kind of dump that up to a value of 70%. And you can already see in the OpenGL viewport that that image has become see-through, and we can see the grid behind it. It's just this transparency value right here. That's all we've changed. Mr. Pryor. Say again? Well, mine's not. Okay. Mine's not. So I needed to make it transparent. Okay. All right. So now that my image is transparent, thank you, James, I can move it around because I need to move my image where it needs to go. Okay. Now notice that I'm in my item mode, and I'm just going to grab the move tool, and my action center still. Where is it? There it is. There's my tool handle. And I'm just going to move it until those red dots are kind of close, somewhere right around over there. And it's, yeah, that's close enough for government work. Okay. But the government's closed, so I guess it's close enough. All right, so just get it close. Get it close. Now, if you'd like, you could move this image up along so that it's kind of sitting on the center of the y-axis too. So it's kind of like sitting on the floor, if you will. You absolutely could do that. I think that's a nice addition to this step. Okay. Now, from this this profile here, you can roughly kind of see the outline that we're trying to create here. The outcome of this assignment is, or yeah, excuse me, the outcome of this profile is going to be both the outer and inner wall of this medicine bottle. I've also given you in green up there at the top a nice indication as to where the cap should be located. At the conclusion of this homework assignment, this should be a subdivision surface object, so we shouldn't see any polygons along the surface of the mesh. So keep that in mind as you're going through the process of shoring up those edges to maintain all of those plane changes along the topology of your mesh. Using the pen tool here, I think, is the best tool to very quickly define the profile of our little medicine bottle. Okay? All right. It's really quite easy. I know you guys can do it. Already right. However, since I'm in a giving mood, I give, and then I give some more. I'll just do it real fast. And this really is kind of how easy working with profiles can be. One thing, and I just kind of broke my own habit there, and I apologize. Whenever you're creating polygons, and it doesn't matter if you're using one of the unit primitive tools or the pen tool or any number of the creation tools, you always want to make sure you're in the polygonal selection mode, okay? I was still in item mode, and I've learned from my experience from modeling in Modo that at times this can give you funky results. So always be in your polygonal selection mode before you start modeling. And also, make sure that you're on a mesh item, okay? That way you're directing all of these polygons to automatically be placed in that mesh item. All right, and I'm just simply going to very quickly define some of these points, and I'm just going to breeze through it. One of the things I've learned when working with the pen tool on this assignment, if you start getting results like this where the edge crosses, don't freak out, don't worry about it, keep going, okay? Keep going, keep working your way all the way around the mesh, and that weird shape will eventually be resolved. Also make sure that merge is off, okay? And if you get something like that, don't freak out, just keep going. Can you put it in wireframe? You could put it in wireframe, just keep swimming. Okay. Just keep swimming. Anyone? Finding Nemo? Just me? Okay. I love Finding Nemo. It's my favorite Pixar movie. So happy they're doing another one. Did you guys know that? They're making another Finding Nemo? Finding Dory. I know, I can't wait. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. Oops. Yeah, I guess Ellen she's been begging Pixar since the success of Finding Nemo to make a sequel. So I'm very pleased that they are in fact going to do that. All right. Looks like I forgot a couple points in here. In my speed, I forgot a couple control vertices. Just follow the template. There we go. Spacebar to drop the tool. Things are looking pretty good. And now I just need to, I'm kind of done with the backdrop item for the time being, so I can just turn it off. And now I need to do some utility stuff. Where am I going to place those two vertices? These are the border verts for the profile. Where do they need to be? Where do they need to be? On the x, right? The center of the x-axis. So a value of 0. What tool can I use to very quickly align those two vertices to a value of 0 on the x? You had it. Kinda. Set position. Set position. Center selected is going to do it, but if you have more than one vertice selected, remember, it's going to average the location of those two vertices and place the middle point at the center of the scene. We don't want that to happen, so set position is my jam. So I'm going to do vertex, set position, at a value of 0 along the x-axis. We'll hit OK. Boom. Rock and roll. That's what we want. Rock and roll. All right. Things are looking good. Now I want to make sure that I'm centered along the z-axis so that my radial array works correctly. Looking good. Let's do center selected along the z. Boom, boom. Okay. And now, oops, let me select it again. I accidentally forgot to select it. And now I can run duplicate, radial sweep, turn the action center to origin, single left click on the viewport, but bam, there it is. I like it. Spacebar to drop the tool. There it is. There it is. Now, if you get a funky result, don't worry about it, okay? Because we can always go back in and fix it later. What we get at the outset, I'm sorry, did my phone just ring? Sweet, my new phone works. Nice. I just got a new phone. I got a new Office phone. I'm pretty stoked about it. I do like instant messaging like on my phone and stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy. I can do like, I feel so much like empowered with the new phone on campus. I apologize. Okay, so don't worry. If the radial array tool messes up, or excuse me, if the radial sweep tool messes up, don't freak out, okay? Because what we get at the outset of this tool are polygons. So if you get some sort of weird pattern at the bottom, don't worry about it, because we can always delete those polygons and fix them, okay? I noticed that a lot of people spend a lot of times trying to figure out why the tool didn't work when it would have been faster if you just fixed the problem, with the easy edit tools than trying to figure out why the tool didn't behave the way it should have, okay? Which makes sense, because set position is a new tool, right? Okay. Let me see what you're talking about. That's because you have every single vertice selected. Because remember, we are physically moving whatever is selected to a location in the scene. If you have everything selected, all those points are going to go to the center of the x-axis, center of the x-axis. So what we want to do is select those two down there. Yes, yes. Good. Now set position will give you the result that you're after. Okay? All right. Let me show you what I'm talking about real fast. So if you get like a problem at the bottom of your medicine bottle, don't worry about it. Just delete the polygons, and then you can just select the opening, hit the P key to fill the polygon, and you're back to working. Okay? I always tell folks that when you're in the middle of a modeling job or when you're in the middle of production, this is not the time to troubleshoot and understand why a tool has fired off incorrectly. What you need to do is get the job done, okay? After the fact, when you're in the post-mortem stage, when you have some time to reflect upon the job, then you can go back in and really understand where things went awry, okay? All right. one other thing, and I'm going to leave you with this when it comes to the modeling stuff. Okay, if you get, I'm getting it very, very, yeah, okay. It's kind of difficult to see, and I apologize on this particular instance. But if you look very carefully right there, and right there, and right there, we have some funkiness happening in the mesh itself. Oh, I know a way to further illustrate this. Okay, I want to go in and shore up some edges here. I think I'm just going to go into loop slice, count of 2, mode of symmetry, and just throw down some additional loops so I can shore up those plane changes. Okay, something like that, just so I have some really nice crisp edges to work with along this section of my mesh. Yeah, looking pretty great. Awesome. Ah, okay. Now we have some issues. What happened here? Yeah, the polygons are freaking out. And Nathan's got it right. This is the inside poking out through the exterior wall of my medicine bottle. So in many ways, it's that. When you're shoring up the edges for subdivision surfacing for this mesh, you have to do the outside and you have to do the inside, okay? You have to do the inside, so you have to go into the bottle and add some geometry in here. Now this can get a little tricky to select things on the inside. You know, you can go down the rabbit hole. Let's see if I can do it. Ah! There we go. And now I'm inside the bottle. Whoa. Okay, so that works? Yes, sir. It's not working. Okay, we can take a look at it during lab, okay? Just get a shape for the time being, because I want to move on and start talking about lights here in a minute, okay? So don't forget, you can very quickly shore up these inside polygons and get the result that we're after. Once you have those inside jobbers done, you can see that we're getting a pretty nice result across the entirety of the surface, okay? Rock and roll. Okay, pretty cool. All right, I want to spend, so this is pretty much how we're going to be modeling this object for the homework assignment this week. If you've been following along, you may have actually kind of finished it already. It's a pretty easy model. The rest of our time today, I would like us to spend talking about lighting, because there's some important lighting ideas that we need to really kind of zero in on before we go too much further in this class. Lighting is an important artistic element of working inside of any 3D modeling application. It doesn't matter if you're doing this in Max or in Maya or Cinema 4D. You have to have a really, really solid understanding and mastering of the light types in any 3D application to give us a good result. Now I'm going to change my scene here a little bit to give us some new elements. I'm going to go into my preset browser and I'm going to automatically load in a shadow catcher so I can start to simulate the lights on the ground. I'm also going to select that shadow catcher and just make it significantly bigger. There we go. Cool. Cool. All right. Excellent. I'm also going to add a different environment preset into the mix. So if I go back into my preset browser, I can choose environments from my navigational list here. We'll do Studio, and then I want to choose black. Okay, now I'm sure a lot of you guys are saying, Pat, why in the world did you choose black? And maybe I choose, there we go, that's better. So this is the Black Studio 01, okay? And I'm going to use this one initially just so I can talk about some shadow types, okay? And then we're going to go back to black. Alrighty, right? Okay. Shadow catcher is in the meshes, then the basic folder in the mesh preset library, okay? There are two things that can instantly, and I mean instantly, completely destroy and screw up a darn good model. We could spend hundreds upon hundreds of hours modeling something that has just an extraordinarily high amount of detail to have it ruined, and I mean completely ruined, by bad textures and bad lighting. People spend their entire lives, their entire careers, focusing on both of these two Very, very complex and intricate art forms in CG. Out there in the real world, there are texture artists who all they do is set up materials and textures. That's all they do, okay? They are masters at the craft. They are masters at understanding how light interacts with all of these surfaces to achieve a variety of different results. And then there's also lighting directors. I sat next to a guy at my old studio who was a phenomenal CG lighter. He just did a really great job. He knocked it out of the park every single time. And his sole focus within our production pipeline was just to place lights in the scene, okay? So there's a lot going on in both of these art forms, and they can absolutely have a direct impact as to what the audience is going to see at the outset of our render. So I wanted to spend some time today talking about the role of lighting and the different light types inside of Modo. And there are a whole bunch of them, and we're not going to go through all of them, because that'd be an overwhelming conversation, but there are a couple rock stars that I want to talk about, some highlights from the list that are important to point out. Since day one in here, we've been interfacing with a very unique light type that's found in every default Modo scene, and what I'm talking about is the directional light. I'm inside the render tab, and I've opened up my item list, and if you look very carefully here, you can see my directional light just chilling in my item list. The directional light is the default light item that comes with the Modo. And just by looking at the image here, what type of light property, if you were to compare it to something out here in the real world, what type of illumination does the directional light create?
Flashlight.
I wouldn't say so much a flashlight. Sunlight. It's more akin to the sun. And you'll see the flashlight in a minute, Thomas, okay? The directional light, in many ways, behaves identically to the way the sun works, okay? Directional light, it's an infinite wall of light stemming from one location within the scene. Now, visually, based on the render that we can see on my screen here, what's a good visual indicator as to the direction and the orientation of the directional light within the scene? Where do I know the light's coming from? There's two things. Yes, the shadow is one. And if you look carefully, you can see my shadow popping up down here on the floor. This is why I added the shadow catcher into my scene, so you could see my shadow catcher, or my shadow. Now look at the way the shadow is being drawn on the render itself. What are some of its properties? How does it look? Solid. It's very long, okay? Does the shadow look the same at the base as it does at the end? It doesn't? You sure? Kind of looks the same to me. Maybe let me define the areas that my brain's looking at. So the base would be over here. Okay, if you look at the quality of the shadow here, it's pretty much identical to the way it is way out over there. Huh? Yeah. These are kind of telltale signs of a directional light. Okay? And this is the way our shadows, well, this is kind of the way our shadows look if we were to go outside and stand under the sun right now, okay? Directional lights are always going to look as though they're exterior lights, okay? Now, because it's an infinite wall of light that's coming from a specific point within the scene, controlling our directional light becomes a little bit of a challenge. The guys down at Luxology have done us a real solid, and they've given us an OpenGL viewport that we have access to inside of our render tab. Excuse me. There we go. If we pop it open, I'm just going to go into the Model Single tab down here, and I'm going to select my directional light. Now, all lights are items within the scene, so I need to be in item mode. And with my item selected, I'm going to go Shift-A to see where it's at. And I actually turned the visibility of my lights off. There it is. Okay. So there's my light. There's my directional light. You can see the indicator in the OpenGL viewport. It's kind of this dashed line with a kind of this cylinder in the center. Oops, excuse me, zoomed in too far. What's most important about most of the different lights you find in Modo is this little arrow that's coming out the front. What would you imagine that little arrow represents? Yeah, the way the light rays are facing within the scene. Now, at the core of its rendering engine, say again?
I think I broke something. I can't seem to find my directional light.
Do Shift-A. Select it, do Shift-A. If you still don't see it, and this is what happened to me a moment ago, put your cursor in the center of your OpenGL viewport, hit the O key, and just make sure that Show Lights is turned on in the Visibility tab. Yeah, sometimes, and I'm going to turn Show Camera on too. Okay, so the arrow that stems from the front of the light, I'm going to turn off my shadow catcher. There we go. The arrow that stems from the front of the light represents the orientation that all the light rays are following. Okay. What would happen if I was to move this light within the scene? So if I fired off the move tool, let's just do it real fast. Check out, notice the orientation of my shadow along the ground right now. I want to move my light with the move tool. Is anything changing? No. The only parameter that the directional light really cares about is rotation. It doesn't matter where the light is, it's only focusing on the rotation of that light. So I can place this light anywhere that I want in my scene. It's never, ever, ever going to change the illumination qualities of my scene until I rotate it, okay? Like the sun. This is an infinite plane of light that's coming from a very specific orientation within the scene, right? The rotation channel is the only element that's going to affect the quality of this light type. So if I was to change my tool to the rotation tool, in the E key on my keyboard, now when I rotate my light along the y-axis, you can see that the shadows are changing, the quality of light being cast along the surface of my object is changing. Okay, pretty cool. Now we're lighting the bottle from the opposite side. You can also maybe dump it down along the Z. And now we're kind of lighting our little bottle as if the sun was directly overhead. So the rotation channel is the only one that the directional light really cares about. Doesn't care about move, doesn't care about scale. And FYI, you really shouldn't scale any of your lights anyways, okay? So that's the directional light. That's the directional light. It's always going to recreate the illusion of the sun. One other characteristic of a directional light is the color that's being created. So if I was to go over into my shader tree, check it out. Here's my shader tree. And if we cruise down below the library, we have this lights category. And if I was to expand it, boom, there it is. There's the directional light. And you've probably already noticed that every light is going to be created with a material. This material allows us to do a number of different things. But most importantly, and I think most immediately, it allows us to change the color of our light. Zoom out and examine the properties of it. Light material. There it is, color. In all honesty, all lights are yellow and blue. Lights are never white. Lights are never white. All light types in our universe are yellow and blue, shades of yellow and blue. Okay? There is no light type. It's physically impossible to have a light that is pure 100% white. So everything needs to be yellow and blue. Small, and I'm not talking about like dark blue. You know, I'm not talking about like this. Okay? I'm not talking about like that kind of blue, and I'm not talking about like that kind of yellow. Okay? I'm talking about very, very light blues and very, very light yellows. Okay? If you were to go outside, although the sun is always going to create the illusion of yellows, reds and yellows. Okay? If you were to come inside, if we were to turn all the lights on inside this room, what type of color do these fluorescent lights create? Kind of blue. Fluorescent lights are very, very blue. If you were to look through the window of my office there, you can see that I have a halogen bulb just chilling on a desk lamp in there. What color of light is it producing? Yellow. Yeah, it's a yellow, but it's a dark yellow. Okay. The lamp shade that I got on top of it is making it kind of reddish orange. All light colors are yellows and blues, so it's important that we go in and define their color inside the light material. This also allows us to be extraordinarily creative. We could, if we wanted to, make some really interesting light colors. Out there in the real world, we often put gels on top of our lights to create the illusion of different colors that help sculpt our models and create some really compelling, kind of cool looking images. So we can be creative and have fun with it as well. All right, I want to put this back to a very, very light shade of blue, or a very, very light shade of yellow. There we go. And I'm talking just a light. And just that one instant change has already made a big impact on the quality of my render. It feels as though this object is being lit by an actual real-world light now. It feels, just by that small color change, as though this is maybe outside. that we set up a photography studio outside and the sun is illuminating this shape. Small little detail, okay, that makes a big impact on the quality of our render. Now, directional lights aren't the only light type that we have within our scene. I'm going to just take a step back for a second, and I'm going to delete my directional light. There we go. Yes, yes to all. You can see what happens to my render. We can find all of our lights in our item list. So if we wanted to add new lights into the mix, we can go Add Item, Lights, and you can see all the different light types that we have access to. Now, we're not going to go through all of these today because we'd be here until like 5 o'clock tonight, and I know you don't want that. So we are going to go through a couple rock stars. There are a couple of things in here that are really important to talk about. We're going to talk about the point light and the spotlight and the area light. Okay, and those 3 additional light types give us a nice kind of tool set for us to use to continue working lighting our scene. Now we're going to add a point light into the mix. So let's add a point light. You can see it's indicated there inside the item list. Now, where is the point light? We added a new light. Where did it get placed? Inside the bottle, which is where? At the origin. Whenever we generate a new light or a new camera, it's automatically going to be created at the origin of our scene. So if you're confused as to where in the hell your light is, look at the origin. Another great kind of power user trick is just to select the light in the item list and do Shift-A. So I want to do Shift-A, which is going to auto-fit my viewport to look at the selected item. So Shift-A, there it is. It's chilling right down there at the origin of the scene. It's kind of inside my bottle at the moment. So let's get it out. Now, the point light is kind of the opposite when it comes to working with its transforms from of that of the directional light. The directional light, we just wanted to rotate it. That's all it did, right? It didn't care where its position was within the scene. Point light's the opposite. We can rotate it till the cows come home. It's never going to change a single thing within our scene. The only element within the transform section that the point light cares about is its position. So I'm going to fire off the move tool and change its position. All right. And let's see, I can just barely, I want to turn off my shadow catcher just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see what's going on. So there's my point light. If you look very carefully, that little bright spot on the side of my medicine bottle is the illumination that's being cast from our point light. Now, if we were to describe the point light to someone who's not in 3D modeling, if we were to create an illusion for them, a metaphor, how would you describe what a point light is? Huh? I like it. It's a fairy. It's a magical little fairy. Sure, why not? No. A lantern. I love it. A light bulb. It's like a light bulb, okay? It's it's called a point light. So really what we're defining is a single location within our 3-dimensional scene, and light rays are being emitted from every direction from that single point. Point light. These are a classic light type. They've been around for generations, seemingly. It's one of the original light types from the 80s, okay? They're very quick and easy and cheap to render, which is why they've kind of hung around for a while. But there are some parameters in here that make it kind of funky and interesting to work with, okay? Let me turn my shadow catcher back on and start working with the point light, okay? Now, the point light is going to give us some really interesting shadows, but right now we can just barely see the impact of this light on our scene, right? It's difficult because of the size of my medicine bottle. It's difficult for me to gauge the effect of this light. So where are we to go to increase its brightness? I want to dial up its intensity a little bit. I want to really crank up the values. Where am I going to go? I like the way you're thinking. Let's go to the properties tab. Let's go to the item list. Okay. Now this is something that if you're in the render tab, you just select the point light from your item list, and then over in the properties tab here, we have a couple of parameters here that are going to influence the quality and the intensity of this light. Now, at the core of the entire Modo rendering system is a physically based lighting setup. So what we're doing here is that we're trying to simulate how light rays truly work out there in the real world. So in order to make our light brighter, we have to turn up the radiant intensity. Okay, this is the brightness value. Okay, so in your mind, every time you see the word radiance or radiant intensity, that means brightness. Okay, so if you just dial up this value, you're going to make your light brighter. Let's just do it real fast. I'm just going to left click and drag on the arrows. Excuse me. There we go. And now we can see that we're just blasting that area with a tremendous amount of light. I love it. We can move it around the scene, completely change how this works. We can even put it in the medicine bottle if we want. Now it's in the medicine bottle. So I'm looking down in the medicine bottle right now, and it's totally blasted out with light rays. Kind of fun. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could. Okay. So the light ray, or excuse me, the point light, in every way is going to interact and behave kind of like a light bulb would out there in the real world. Okay. It's a quick render. It's a fast render. It does create some very intense soft shadows on the object itself. I find myself using point lights to kind of fill in certain areas within my scene, just kind of blast some lights in the corners. Every once in a while, when I need a quick render, I'll use a point light up close to a person, but often, for me, these are background lights. These are background lights, okay? But they're a good one to have kind of in our toolbox. All right, let's delete this one. Yes to all. Let's add a new light type into the mix. So lights, this time we're going to do spotlight. All right, now Mr. Pearson, this one's for you. What type of light does this one represent?
I'm going to go with studio light.
Studio light or flashlight. I think you said flashlight earlier, right?
Maybe.
This kind of resembles like a flashlight does, right? If you think about it, my little pen here is kind of like a flashlight. Hold the handle on one hand, I get to do this with it, and then the light's coming out here, right? Well, we're doing the exact same thing. We get to move that light around, but then we also get to rotate it kind of like a flashlight, okay? If you're used to going to the theater, this behaves almost identically to the classic spotlights that you're used to seeing in theatrical productions, okay? Notice that there's two elements of the widget, though. The interface has given us two different things here. At the base of the light, this is where we're going to move and rotate it. So if I was to move it up, maybe I want this guy to shine at my medicine bottle. I'm going to move it up. Okay. And then I'll perhaps move it out over here. Okay. And then we have to rotate it to look at what we want it to illuminate. So it's kind of a two-stage process. Working with spotlights are a little bit more complex because it requires us to move and rotate. Point lights, we only had to move. Okay. Directional lights, we only had to rotate. Well, with this light type, we have to do both. We have to move and rotate simultaneously. All right. Yes?
Could you change your viewpoint to spotlight and move that around itself?
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. And Thomas has stumbled upon something that's really cool inside of Modo. Our OpenGL viewports down here can be changed to look through our scene from a number of different perspectives. One of those perspectives is the actual light itself. Check this out, okay? So if I change my OpenGL viewport down here, and specifically where I'm going is this guy. So I don't want to look through my OpenGL viewport through the perspective camera. I want to look through it under the light section spotlight. Now, what am I seeing here? I'm seeing what the spotlight sees, and I can use my standard viewport navigation controls to move and orientate the spotlight around the scene. It's a really great, fast way of positioning lights where we want them to go. So now I can just like grab it, move it where I want, and say, yep, that's kind of where I want my spotlight to go. A really quick way of positioning lights within our scene. Okay. So let me turn my shadow catcher back on, and we can start talking about some of the things that I've learned from working with the spotlights. Okay. Spotlights, you need a lot of intensity on your spotlights to really see their effects. Okay, so I want to dial up the radiant intensity on my spotlight so that we can start to get a better understanding as to what they're doing. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let's put this up to 15. Yeah. All right. And I'm also going to turn off global illumination in my scene. I apologize. I think our GI, yeah, that's what I was after. Okay. Our GI was kind of getting in the way, and it wasn't showing us what these shadows were doing. I did this because I wanted to show you the role of that cone, because spotlights, we have a couple other parameters that will change its behaviors. Okay. All right, check it out. I got my spotlight selected, and if you look at the interface down here at the end, we have two different little handles. This outside one will allow us to change the cone angle, so we can really dial in our spotlight, make it big. We can zero in our spotlight to only show a certain portion of the image, okay? Just like our classic theatrical lights. The other handle allows us to create a feathering effect. And if you're a super nerd like I am, this feathering effect is called the penumbra, okay? And if we increase that and didn't decrease that, there we go. Maybe if it'll update. Come on now. Is it? Let me make sure I got my stuff dialed here. Soft edge, yeah. Interesting. I don't know why it's not updating. I wonder if I have just stumbled upon a bug, because what that's supposed to be doing here is supposed to be blurring the edges right around this part of my spotlight. Okay. Interesting. Maybe my spotlight is too bright. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just not bright enough. That's a really good point. That may have been it. I think that may have been it. Now it's super bright. The shadows are being ray traced. Interesting. Well, that's a bummer. Oh, you know what? This actually makes sense. We're not going to see the effect of this on a shadow catcher. If this was a two-dimensional plane that wasn't a shadow catcher, we'd see the effect of the penumbra. If you look very carefully on the actual object itself, it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. That highlight in there is changing its fall-off ratio and value a little bit. It's kind of hard to see on the projector, but my screen is a little bit easier to see. It should work. It should work. All right. Well, anyways, that's how you work with the spotlight. Okay. It's a really neat light type. Allows us to create some kind of traditional theatrical looks quickly inside of our lighting setup. Okay. The last one that I want to show you is my favorite. A lot of the characteristics of the directional point and spotlights are you're going to get very hard shadows. And specifically what I'm talking about are all of these things in here. These really crisp shadow types. Well, I don't want hard shadows. I want soft shadows. Okay? The aerial light is our opportunity to enter into that soft shadow world. If you're used to working inside of a traditional studio kind of environment, you're probably used to working with soft boxes that produce very nice illumination within your scene. Aerial lights are that for us. Now, aerial lights require the global illumination system to be active. So I'm going to go into my render section, global illumination, and I'm going to just turn it on. Okay? Go. Let me select my area light. And let's do it real fast. Now, the area light is pretty cool. Please note that on the area light indicator, there is an orientation value. You probably can just barely see the arrow popping through there. We have to be very mindful of that arrow, as that represents the direction our light is facing. And let's get this dialed here. There we go, and I can just barely see the effects of my area light within the scene. Okay. Also, the area light has these two blue squares along the outset of the light. Okay, that can change the size of our area light. The area light is only going to emit light rays from the interior of that little square. So that little box down here represents the area that light rays are going to be emitted from. So if I make this kind of big, you can see the effects that are happening within my scene. Yeah. Yeah, we're actually going to look into that next week. They're called lumigons, and they're awesome. I actually love working with lumigons, okay? So let me just position this thing kind of where I want it to go. Something perhaps like that. One of the things I've learned with working with area lights, if you change your action center to selection, it's a little bit easier to work with. All right. Now we're getting some lovely, lovely, lovely soft shadows crossing, of course, on the ground plane itself and on the object. And that's really what's important. It's nice, soft shadows. Now, because we're firing individual light rays, this is kind of a true physically based light source. So it's fine firing off a whole bunch of small little rays within the scene. This is going to take a little bit longer to render, but the render quality is worth it. Definitely more appealing to the eye when you look at the quality of these renders, okay? We like working with area lights, especially for like product shots, for the stuff that we've been doing for the last couple of weeks when we're working with objects and instead of exteriors. All right, let me show you a cool concept that I want everyone to be aware of with the lights inside of Modo. Since we're working with a true physically based light type system inside of our rendering engine, moving our lights closer to our objects are going to make the illusion of that light brighter. Much like we do out here in the real world. If I was to bring in a gigantic spotlight here, and if I was to move it very close to David, that light would cast a much brighter illumination across his body than if it was way out over here, right? Makes sense, right? Because if the light's way out over here, those light rays are going to decay over the distance that they need to travel before they hit David, right? If I'm right up close next to David, there's a much shorter distance the light rays need to travel, so they're not going to lose their intensity. This is a naturally occurring phenomenon. We can't turn it off. Okay? We can even measure it. It's called the inverse square law, and traditional cinematographers and portrait photographers have been working with the inverse square law since day one of their craft. We have access to that. In all honesty, a number of traditional photographers are finding working inside of Modo very comfortable because of this interactive, physically based lighting system. It's almost parallel to what we're used to working with here in the real world. So instead of monkeying around with the radiant intensity to make our lights brighter, we can just move them closer or move them away from our objects to make their effect brighter or dimmer. So moving our lights closer to our objects is going to make them appear brighter. You can see that in action on my little medicine bottle up here. So if I move it closer, whoop, much brighter. Now it's blasting out that left side of my medicine bottle. Okay? If I was to move it away, much, much dimmer. Okay? Also, one other thing about area lights, the size of the light is also going to determine the intensity of it. So if you have a gigantic area light, so if I just really make it big, now we have a much larger area that light rays are being created from. So more light rays are hitting the surface of our object, so we're getting the appearance that it's brighter. All right, I'm going to hit undo a couple stages here. And I want to change my environment preset back to that black environment because I want to start talking about how we can sculpt our objects with light. Okay. All right, so here's my scene. I have my global illumination system on, and you can kind of see what I've crafted here. The first thing that we're going to talk about in terms of lighting techniques is a tried and true one. It's called the three-point lighting technique. Okay, and I love working with the three-point lighting technique. It's a relatively easy lighting technique to learn. As you would imagine from the name of the technique, we're going to be working with 3 different lights. Okay, but the role of each one of these lights is really important. Okay, we're going to be crafting this entire lighting setup with 3 different area lights. Okay. I like working with area lights. It's really easy to see their effects within the scene. So let's kind of define the role of each one of these area lights. The first one that you're going to create is going to be called the key light. The key light. Take a look at my OpenGL viewport down at the bottom of my render tab here. Okay. You can see my camera just chilling down over there. There's my camera. It's kind of blasting down that way and looking at kind of like this part of my bottle. The key light, okay, which is that guy right there, is the light that's responsible for producing kind of the general illumination within the scene. So at the end of the day, the key light needs to look as though it's the only light in the scene, okay? The key light, primary illumination, that's its role. It needs to be pretty bright, okay, as this light is. It's producing pretty good general illumination for one half of the bottle. Now notice where the key light is in relationship to both the camera and the bottle. I've offset it to the side. We like to light our objects from the sides. That way, we get to control how the shadows are being created. Yes, sir?
Wouldn't a really easy way to deal with this positioning is like just use orthographic top?
Absolutely, for sure. Absolutely. There's a bazillion different ways that you can position these lights within the scene. Absolutely, that's a great way of working. Absolutely. Yes, sir, Mr. Gallagher. Okay, so go to your render tab. You want to do all of your kind of lighting tweaking in your render tab, because that way you can see immediately what's happening. So select well, you don't have a directional light in your scene anymore.
I have an area light.
Area light, okay. So in your OpenGL viewport, go to Model Single, right? Yes. Now change this from looking through the camera to perspective. Now do Shift A to see your light. Hit the O key on your keyboard, and then under the Visibility tab, turn Show Lights On. There we go, and there's your light. There's your light. So now you can move, rotate, and position that light within the scene to get it where you need it to go. All right. So the key light, primary illumination within the scene. Okay, it has an important role. We want to offset these lights to illuminate our objects from the side. That way we can control the left side of the image, or excuse me, the left side of the model independently from the right side of the model. Okay, key light, primary illumination within the scene. Now don't go crazy with it, okay? Notice that mine is pretty bright, but it's not blowing out our image. We don't want to have images that look like this, where the light is so bright and so close that we're getting clipping, okay? You see this in the image here where it's so bright it's gone pure white? That's called clipping. We don't want the images or those pixels to clip. As soon as those images are drawn as pure white, we're never, ever, ever going to get detail in them. We want to have highlights. We want to have parts of our model where it is brighter than others. But we don't want to have the pixels be pure white, 100% white. Okay, that's generally kind of bad. So if we were to look at our scene from the top, this is kind of the setup that I have. My camera is over here, it's blasting that way. I have my key light blasting this way, and then I'm going to have another light blasting this way. So this is the camera, this is the key light, and then the next light that we're going to place in our scene is going to be the fill light. Now the fill light has a very specific role, and its sole purpose is just to kind of fill in the shadow area on the right-hand side of the model. If you look closely at my little medicine bottle up here, you know, this side over here is incredibly dark, right? We want some information over here. We need a light over here to fill in the shadows and to remind our audience that this is a three-dimensional cylinder within this scene. So the fill light is going to allow us to do that. You can use an area light. I'm going to use an area light, and I'm actually just going to duplicate the area light that's in my scene by right-clicking on the item in the item list and choosing duplicate. And then in item mode, I'm just going to move it where I want it to go. I'm also going to rotate it, so something kind of like that. Now immediately you can already start to tell that now we're creating a lighting setup that's a little bit more compelling. But if you look carefully at the quality of our render, it looks flat, doesn't it? It doesn't look like a cylinder anymore. The left side of the image, when compared to the right side of the image, looks identical. looks like a two-dimensional drawing. Well, last time I checked, this is a three-dimensional rendering, okay? So we want to produce an image that reminds our audience that this is a three-dimensional object. The way we do this with the three-point lighting setup is to reduce the brightness of our fill light substantially. We want the key light we want it to look as though the key light is lighting the entire scene. But we want to control those shadows with the intensity of our fill. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do on my fill light here. Let's just rename it fill. I'm going to dumb down the brightness a little bit. Yeah, already better, right? Let's go further. Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. Check that action out. This is precisely what we want. If you look at the quality of the image that we're creating, the left side, clearly bright, right? Much, much stronger control or much, much stronger appearance of the light chilling over here. Okay, all of this stuff, very, very bright. This is awesome, 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 awesome. But if we start to compare it to this side over here, it's not as bright. So we're producing a three-dimensional image. It looks as though the light rays are kind of wrapping around our bottle, but they're really not, because there's another light that's giving us all of this lovely illumination. And we're controlling it. Mr. Pryor. It will. It will. But that's okay. Don't worry about that for today. So we want to be able to control how our image is being drawn with the lights. In many ways, the placement of the lights within our scene are going to continue to mold and sculpt the object in 3 dimensions, right? The placement of these shadows and the inclusion of specular highlights in these different tonal values, as we call them, are going to remind the audience of the dimensionality of this object. Now we get one more light to create in the 3-point lighting setup, and this third light is called the rim light. And the third light, the rim light, plays a critical role, and its sole purpose is to blast some light rays coming down like this, okay? We want to blast some light rays at what is generally referred to as the shoulder of our object. And for us, we literally have a shoulder right here and right here. By blasting some light rays kind of in this area of our mesh and maybe up over in here, we're going to provide some separation from the background. It's going to make it look like this image is just popping away from the background of our set. So let's just create it real fast. I'm going to create a new light. It's going to be an area light. Let's move it into location. I need to flip it around 180 degrees so it's facing the right way. There we go. And let's get this into where we need it to go. I want to make it a long, skinny light. Something kind of like that. Let's move it up. And I'm just going to blast it down at the shoulders of my medicine bottle. Okay? And, ooh, you can already see its effect. Check it out. Can you see it right there? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's move it closer. Check it out, check it out, check it out. Yeah. Oop, I went too far. That's what I'm talking about. Good times. Good times. So let's see if we can make it a little bit brighter here. Change the intensity to 6.0. Much better. Let's change it to 12. Quadruple it from its original settings, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're after. I'll make the screen bigger so it's a little bit more apparent to see. I recognize firsthand that on this projector it may be a small challenge to understand the role of the rim light. But if you look very carefully within the scene here, what we're generating is a small specular highlight on the shoulders of our object. This is separating this object from the background and making it look as though it's standing on its own, like the background is way off in the distance. Without the rim light, it's going to feel as though the background is completely taking over our object. Let me turn off the rim light. Yeah. See how this part of the image just kind of escapes into the background? It blends in perfectly. By adding in that small light, that rim light into our scene, boom. Now it feels as though it's separated out from the background, and we're ready to rock and roll. This is the 3-point lighting setup. It's a really easy setup to use.
Is that one supposed to be brighter on that head?
Yeah, it's going to be generally brighter. As a reminder, let's just look at our scene from the top. I think it's probably the easiest to understand. if we look at it from this orientation. Okay, 3-point lighting setup. Over here, we have the fill light, or excuse me, the key light. The key light. Then we have the fill light, who's going to fill in the shadows on the opposite side of the bottle. And the back one is going to be the rim light, which is going to separate our object from the background of our scene. Now, if we do this correctly, we can change the backgrounds in Modo at any time and not have to worry about how our illumination is going to change our scene. So if we were to go back into the preset browser and load in like the 3-point green light system, boom, looks better. Already, we have to dial down some of the intensities of our light because the global illumination system is kind of getting in the way, okay? But we can do that pretty quickly, okay? The lighting setup still works. We just have to change the intensity, okay? Good times. This is my key. It's a good idea to kind of name all this stuff. Key, fill, rim. And let's turn this down to a value of 2. Let's put it down to 1.0. There we go. That's not so bad. Fill. Let's put it down to 0.25. Yeah. The rim light is probably way too bright for this particular scene. Let's put 3. Yeah, that's pretty good. Not so bad. I like it. I like it a lot. Not so bad for a couple seconds worth of work. 3 lights, 3 rolls. Key, fill, and rim. Questions? And at the end of the day, they produce a darn good looking render too. Yeah, of course you're going to want to put textures and materials on this. This is just an illustration of where we're starting. And the moment you start applying textures and materials, you're going to have to dial in the intensity and the location of these lights to get the result that you want, okay? Lighting is something that you want to kind of set up pretty early on in the render stage, but the moment you start adding materials in there and changing some of the surface characteristics of your object, the render is going to change, as it should. As things become more reflective, bumpy, different colors, the quality of the light and the illusion that the light is creating is going to change. Okay? So it's not a fire and forget type thing, okay? One other thing about composition, I've been noticing this on some of your renders, okay? You know, this is a 3D modeling class. We want to showcase the model as much as we can, so get all up in there, okay? Don't be having your objects kind of positioned like this within the frame. Get up in there, all right? Get nice up-close renders. We want to showcase our models within inside the frame of our render. So get close to it. Say hello. Give it a high five. Good job, me. I did an awesome model. Okay, we want to showcase our work. Okay, in many ways, a lot of these projects are truly designed to be portfolio pieces. The quality of your portfolio is going to be judged on the quality of your renders. If your objects are really small on your render, someone like me who's potentially going to hire you is not going to be able to evaluate the quality of your work. Okay, Mr. Pryor, question. No. An epic scratch, perhaps. Kellen, yeah. You can't find the controls for the light. Okay. I can answer that question during lab. I want to just really quickly revisit the expectations for this week's assignments. Okay. So for your homework this week, you're going to be finishing out your medicine bottle. If you need a small refresher on the Radial sweep tool, I've given you a really cool video that walks you through the entire process. So this video right here will take you through steps A through Z on how the Radial sweep tool works. There are some particulars of this homework assignment that I want to make sure everyone's aware of. It's worth 50 points. It's due by the beginning of the next class, next week on week 8. Of course, you're going to be making the geometry for the medicine bottle. I also would like you to make a very small tabletop. Okay? Gone are the days of placing our objects in this infinite gray universe and they're floating. We want our objects to be grounded in some sort of reality. So make a small surface for our object to sit on. Shadow catcher doesn't count for this one. I want some geometry in here. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Also, I would like you to employ the 3-point lighting setup. I said an area light for the key, an area light for the fill, and a spotlight for the rim. but I'll leave it to you to figure out what combination you want to use. I'm going to get a little loosey-goosey on that requirement. So if you wanted to use 3 area lights, 3 spotlights, you know, whatever combo is good for me. Although 3 area lights is a good place to start. Please make sure that global illumination is on. Your area lights are not going to work if it's off. Okay, got to have that on. The HDR reflection maps, those are the environment maps. The HDR reflection map, that's the actual technical term for what those environment maps are. Okay, so these are the environment presets that come with Modo. Okay, feel free to use the studio presets are the ones that I would recommend that you'd use. I think you're going to get a really nice pretty render with those at the core of your render. Okay. Of course, materials and textures for all objects within the scene. So the medicine bottle and the tabletop. 1280 by 720. If you've noticed that your grade has been reduced some values, that's because you're rendering at the wrong size for your projects. Okay, 1280 by 720. 1280 by 720. I almost always remind you as to why I removed points in your homework. Okay, so in the comment section on D2L. So if you were like, oh, why did I get a B instead of a 2000%? Check the comments. It should be in there. Okay. See, oops. Okay, a couple more things, then I'll answer questions. All right. At the conclusion of this project, you're going to be uploading a JPEG and your Luxology project file to the Dropbox on D2L. Here's a link to it down at the bottom of the screen. For your lab assignment, and you may be able to knock this out pretty quick. We've got about 30 minutes left in class. This is going to be goblets and glasses. It's due next week. It's worth 25 points. This is just a kind of a technical exercise to get us used to doing the 3-point lighting setup and to working with the radial sweep. I've given you 2 unique and distinct profiles that I would like you to use in the resources tab. So please use and download. Please download these 2 assets if you haven't already. And these are the profiles right here that I would like you to use for your lab. Okay. You just need one render. One render with both objects in it is just fine and dandy for me. This is cool. I'm happy with this. Okay. Also, please use the 3-point lighting setup that we just employed to do the lighting on this assignment as well. Okay. Should be a pretty easy, fun one. Pretty easy, fun one. All right. Questions? Yes, sir. Where do you help them out? Where do we find the ability to turn on and off the global illumination system? So it's in your render section. So I'm in my shader tree. If I go to the big purple sphere that says render next to it, if I select it, the properties tab is going to have a whole series of vertical tabs, one of which is going to be global illumination, and just want to make sure it's on. It's on by default now. In 601, they had it off by default. It's on by default now. All right, other questions? Yes? Nope. No expectation to make the pills, but if you want to, I say do it. I'm never going to say no for you making your stuff awesomer. And yes, that's a word. I just made it up. I just invented me a cool English dictionary word. All right, any other questions? All right, we got about 30 minutes left in the lab. Let's get to work.